What is up, wrestling fans, and welcome to an all-new edition of the Parts Unknown podcast. I am, of course, the tribal chief of Ringside Intel, Jason Burgos, and with me, as always, is the Floridian wise man himself, the one and only Jose Maldonado. Wise man, how are you doing today?
Dude, I'm hoping to bring the knowledge to this broadcast and to the fans that are listening, man. Doing good, very hot and humid, as you can imagine, down here in Florida. It's not fun when it's peak summertime in May. Can we get a little bit more cool weather? But here we are making the best we got. You know what I mean? It's just, it's a hot one, bro. It's a hot one. We're doing all right otherwise.
And at least you're not like all these unfortunate people around the country that was like are in the line of these crazy storms when this is recording. Like Tornado Alley has pushed further up into the northern part of the northeastern part of the country, where I'm planning to move soon, which is very exciting. I got to avoid tornadoes my entire life in New York City, and now I will have to deal with them in Ohio. This is wonderful.
A different kind of excitement to look forward to, you know. It's just like, you know, Mother Nature putting her hand on you. It's just like, good times to look forward to.
We have a lot of things to talk about, and the one thing we wanted to jump into, and this is, you know, I know you wanted to give it some love too, is if you were one of the people that didn't watch WWE Backlash France, you missed a good show, a very, very good show, and not a very good show mainly because the matches were unbelievable and 5 stars. The matches were good. There was a few good matches. It was the crowd. The crowd completely made that show. The French fans really put fans around the world to shame. And not on purpose. They just were that passionate, that boisterous, that impressive. Like, you know, you could take this one. What were your thoughts from watching the van? And why do you? What are your opinions? I have my own thoughts. But what are your opinions on why they were so much louder than even the best of U.S. Fan bases like New York, Chicago, and Philadelphia?
I think it was just a perfect storm of a boisterous crowd who's typically boisterous for other sports that were starved for wrestling content. You know, there's not very big events, many big events that get taken place over there in Europe. So when this was announced, this was going to be interesting to see how they reacted to it. How was the crowd going to be? You know, they were basically a soccer crowd transplanted into a wrestling event. And they showed it. You know, it was fantastic. It added so much to the event. You know, you liken it to something like, you know, the Sky Dome for WrestleMania 18, where, you know, Rock and Hogan might be, you know, your typical average match, if not for the crowd. Same kind of atmosphere here. It's like the crowd added so much to every match, every event. Just the personalized chants that they were doing. Like, they made AJ Styles seem like the star that he actually is. You know, props to Leon France for giving that man his flowers and making him, you know, seem like something truly special. And, you know, that's just one instance of that. Imagine what they could do in future if they decide, like, Triple H is actually commenting, you know, about maybe a stadium next time. And they earned that. They really bought themselves, you know, a position for a lot of events. And, you know, you consider other European countries that may also get in the mix might have to step up their game and match this crowd too, and that can make for some really fantastic events down the line. This crowd was just fantastic. It is so, you cannot say enough about it. It added so much to it. Anybody who hasn't seen the shows definitely should check them out and take note, because if you're going to, you know, this is a very hot period for WWE. They're attracting record crowds, you know, at every televised event, even, you know, here in the States. And this is going to, you know, prompt people to step it up. And it'll be interesting to see how crowds respond to this going forward, because Leon set the bar really high with that reaction.
Yeah, after the show in the press conference, they mentioned, Triple H mentioned that he had heard reports that Italy was nuts too. And now Italy's kind of on their radar. Italy might be a place they go. But it just shows you, it really, they've been making an effort to go into more foreign markets and stuff like that. Puerto Rico was fantastic. That was another one. The one that really stood out, the way it stood out to me, and I think you mentioned like Sky Dome. The one that I was telling my wife Charlene about, in that I felt it was the same, but like but negative, but the same kind of high level passion was Hammerstein Ballroom for One Night Stand for the ECW. Really like, that was very negative and angry and rageful in a fun way, while this was just pure joy. Because in the end, for you know, no disrespect, we all U.S. fans, we're great fans, and there's some great cities, but we're spoiled. We get to see them all the time. These people, like you mentioned, like, they were probably looking forward to this for months. So not only where you go to a U.S. audience and you have some people that are fans and you have some people that may haven't seen in a while. You know, it's a mixed group and stuff like that. These are probably the diehards of the diehards that made sure they got their tickets right away. The most passionate, like you mentioned, the soccer crowd that has a definitely a different element to it. But I think it's gonna lay the groundwork for just this is gonna happen a lot more. And honestly, I kind of dig that they're doing it and that it's a daytime event. I wish UFC did more daytime events, especially on weekends, because who doesn't want to? Okay, you watch a WWE UFC event during the day and you have your weekend night to yourself and you can do some other things. So that's a great element of it too. But
it's not that big of a transfer either. Yeah, like 1 p.m. on a Saturday is really not that bad. Yeah. And if we're talking about big shows, like obviously the holy grail that people have talked about for years is WrestleMania in London. And I think this can lead to some very big inroads to that potentially happening. Because, I mean, London with Money in the Bank last year was phenomenal. AEW ran all in at Wembley, and they had a phenomenal turnout. So, like, WrestleMania actually doing that seems a lot more realistic now, especially if they're going to get that kind of energy. It'll be a fantastic... And it really will make the spectacle that much bigger on a global scale.
And it's in the end, it's a company that's a business. It's all about the money. And they mentioned after the event, it was the biggest SmackDown attendance in terms of revenue that they ever made for a SmackDown event. I think they said it was the biggest selling event in terms of revenue for arena event ever. The actual Backlash pay-per-view, like. The money's there, and I don't know if that's because maybe the euros are a little bit more than dollars, so it changed that and it affects it. But the money is there, so there's no reason for them not to do these because they're going to make insane money, especially when there's certain places and a lot of places around the country that have to pay to have the WWE come there. Like Puerto Rico paid a few million for WWE coming, so they get that, they get the revenue of the event. It just makes business sense for that to eventually happen. That would be very interesting. Moving on from there, one of the interesting stories during the week was. We've all been paying attention for the diehard fans. The whole Wyatt 6 stuff going on. We're getting the QR codes. We're getting all these little hints, just like when Bray Wyatt came back. It's super exciting. It's very interesting. And there was a report from, I believe it was maybe PW Insider, that they reported who is, at least as of now, supposed to be the members of the group. As it stands right now, it's supposed to be Bo Dallas, a.k.a. Uncle Howdy. Eric Rowan has re-signed, and he's going to be a part of it, which makes sense, the connections with Bray. Nikki Cross is supposed to be another element. Joe Gacy, an NXT name maybe a lot of people are not familiar with. And Dexter Lumis. Now, I get it. All of them fit. I mean, Dexter Lumis, it seems like he's always been high on Triple H. Triple H has been high on him, and they haven't been using him at all. The whole thing with Gargano, I think, unfortunately for Johnny Gargano and Ciampa, I think they're just bringing everybody down. They just really don't fit. They don't have much going on. So this fits for him. Joe Gacy, totally get it. Nikki Cross, I mean, it's a faction that's clearly made to help people that need help. That said, considering that it's continuing on such a big legacy, it's getting such a big setup, are you fine with this setup? Do you feel they could have went another direction? Do you feel that they should maybe tweak it? Maybe somebody else should be in it instead of these 5?
I'm fine with it. I'm tentatively excited. I guess it's the way you can gauge my interest. I do like the lineup. I think an important element of that is Eric Rowan, tying that to the legacy, obviously with the unfortunate passing of Luke Harper and Bray Wyatt. Him being one of the only OG left, I think it's important and adds credibility to the group in the eyes of a lot of the fans. Obviously, Bo Dallas being a big part of that as well. The other 3 are interesting because I'm sort of disappointed that Joe Gacy's in it because NXT fans can say what they want about Schism. I thought they were interesting, and Gacy himself really set himself up as the potential next Wyatt. Now, while that may make sense to put him in this group, I think this kind of undercuts him a little bit, but if it leads to something down the line to where maybe he might take over for Bo or might branch off and do his kind of own thing, that'd be a good showcase for him. So I'd be on the online for that if that were the case. Nikki's great. Nikki always brings great energy. Back in the Sanity days, that manic energy. I think she could bring a lot of that here. And Dexter, same thing. Like Dexter has been spinning his wheels. Loved the stalker gimmick. Loved the fun stuff he was doing that in NXT. So he's kind of been wasting. So to put him in this group, he has the look and the feel of it. So yeah, I'm okay with the lineup so far. And for those particular reasons, especially like Rowan being involved and what may happen with Gacy, there's some intrigue to be had. And honestly, we may have talked about this before, but Bo Dallas has earned this shot to carry on Bray's legacy. You know, anybody who's seen the documentary knows how heartbreaking it was, and how he really cared about, you know, Bray's mind for the business, and is trying to at least pay homage to that. So he definitely deserves the opportunity to do that, and I think fans will embrace it, at least in the beginning, to at least see where it goes. And if they hit a home run, it'll be, you know, a great setup for them going forward.
On one level, I get it, because with factions like this, it's always set up to kind of, you know, you have a main guy, and then you have these other people that need a leg up, or they're new faces, and you're trying to bring them up. But the only thing about it is that Bo Dallas is a guy that I'm sure for most part people would have been fine for a long time if he just got cut. Whatever his talent level is, he's gotten a ton of shots, and people are just kind of over him, and he can move on from. Now, the documentary turned me into a fan. Like, I'm completely rooting for him, and it's interesting the interest he had and the similarities he has to Bray and all those kind of things, his brother. So I'm rooting for him, but he's not the star that the young guys are around and the young women are around. So he kind of needs help in his own way, because he's kind of coming in, and he's going to take on such a big legacy that he's got to follow. So it's going to have its own kind of critiques, and it'll have a honeymoon period, but that'll be tough too. So for what you said about Eric Rowan, it completely makes sense, but he's another one where I'm just kind of like, I'm fine without Eric Rowan. Like, I get it. He's the link between the two in a lot of ways, but in the Wyatt family, he was the weakest of the two. Even when you had the three, and then he expanded to four when they brought in Braun Strowman, he was kind of the weakest guy. Nothing against him. He's just, he's an okay guy. Yeah, he's not anything special, so it's like he's getting a chance again. Nikki, I get. The other guys, I get. I mean, I kind of feel like there have been rumors of Braun Strowman. I think that would have been a good fit, you know, because he would have been the star, and having him as a person that's subservient to Bo Dallas, that's a story in itself. Damn, he's following Bo Dallas. I need to care about Bo Dallas more. That Braun Strowman's following him, and it gives them a big bruiser. Like, where are they going? Like, they might end up being fantastic, and 6 months from now we're talking about, wow, they're so amazing. But if they're supposed to be intimidating and a force to be reckoned with, a guy like Strowman makes a huge difference. And even if you go with Matt Hardy and you're having Broken Matt, you know, that's a star and a character that gives them a certain leg up while everybody's making their way up. So I like it in a lot of ways, but man, I feel like it's lacking the star power. So it's the story and how they make it work is going to be key. So it'll be interesting. But of course, wherever you're watching this, wherever you're listening to this, please like, share, subscribe, comment. Let us know what you think about this, what the Y6 is going to look like so far, and what you thought about the crowd in France for Backlash France. But moving on from there, we've covered a good bit at Ringside. Fans are also as excited for this as they are for the QR code stuff with Bo Dallas and Uncle Howdy's, that the Bloodline had kind of hit a point heading into WrestleMania where it was getting a little stale. It was getting a little meh. We've seen this all before from Jimmy. We've seen this from Solo. And now this story going on with Solo and these new members. It's really freshened things up, and it's made the Bloodline very interesting again. We talked about it a few weeks ago that it seems like there's a split. It almost seems like it's going to be Hollywood versus Wolfpack, and how the NWO and that kind of thing was. But there's a lot of people that are watching this and unfamiliar with Tama Tonga, don't know much about Tanga Loa. There's also these reports of Jacob Fatu, an MLW star that's already signed, and he's probably going to join this new version of the Bloodline Solo. So that's where I wanted for you to really take the fans to the learning tree, because you have such a wide knowledge. You follow all elements of sports beyond just, say, WWE, AEW. Why should new WWE fans be excited for Tama Tonga, Tanga Loa, and Jacob Fatu? Let them know about their impressive resume they've had outside WWE.
Yeah, they've definitely been plying their trade elsewhere and making waves for a long time. You know, Tama Tonga and Tanga Loa, especially out in New Japan. Especially excited that people are getting a taste of Tama Tonga. I've been a fan of his for a while. The energy that he brings. He's that great mix of being a good worker, solid worker. You know, not to impugn his ability. He's really, you know, he can be solid in the ring and had some decent singles runs in New Japan. But he's the perfect mix, because the dude is a great promo, great charisma. You know, he brings a lot to the table, and just in the little time that he's been in WWE, it's been a little bit of a taste of that. kind of like a live wire, you know, and you really love that energy, and he brings that in spades. Tanga Loa is another one who, you know, WWE fans may feel like they're not familiar with him, but old school fans, if you remember his days as Camacho, you know, on the SmackDown brand and everything, this is kind of a return for him. A lot of people are surprised that this is the same guy, but yeah, you know, he's been, you know, cutting it out. Him and Tama Tonga as Gorillas of Destiny out in Japan have been one of the best tag teams in that company for about a decade plus. And it's been great, so I'm really excited for them, especially if they do keep them together, put them in the tag division, or just, you know, with the Bloodline. Just whatever part they're going to take place in this, they're going to add to it. This is not a negative in any case having them there. Jacob Fatu is going to be the really interesting one to see, because there's been a lot of hype around him with hardcore fans. He's been in MLW. He had a year-long title reign. For the longest time, people have been calling him like the next iteration of Umaga in terms of, you know, that kind of athleticism, that kind of energy, that kind of lineage. And, you know, the dude is still young enough to where he can make a serious impact, to the point where, you know, if I can, you know, point people to the article that you wrote on Ringside, talking about how some people are actually scared about how he might overshadow Solo going forward. And that's a big thing, which says a lot about Solo's situation, because, you know, they've put a lot of time and energy in presenting him as the guy. So that's what you can expect from Jacob Fatu, to come in and, you know, basically be that kind of, you know, menace and that kind of, you know, wild card going forward. And honestly, like, who knows what side of the Bloodline he's even going to fall on. Like, you would think he'd fall in with this kind of new side and things like that. So a lot of interesting things to think about. But in terms of what they're going to bring, you know, this shouldn't be seen as a negative or kind of like, you know, any kind of nepotism or anything like that. These three cats have been bringing it for a lot of time outside of WWE, and they're going to bring it to the storyline, and there's some really big things to come. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I'm more of a very casual New Japan fan, and I've been learning more about MLW in recent years and stuff like that. So, but I'm just excited for this idea, because I mean, we all know that's where it's going, and even though we know it, we're still excited for this idea that with Jimmy and Jay are gonna get back together, and they're gonna get back with Roman. That's where it's, you know, just the crowd reactions of these chants if we want Roman, like Roman is the door is wide open for him to just become a white hot baby face and just have that kind of rock going from heel to baby for his massive turn, and just make tons of money for them. But just the idea of the Usos, arguably the greatest tag team in WWE of all time, going against the greatest tag team, arguably of New Japan of all time. That's fascinating, and, you know, to get it still while they're still in prime years, and then you have the element that they're related and they're part of this bloodline. They have the bloodline story. Like, it's just going to be such a fun, elevated way. And I mean, I've been learning a lot about Jacob Fatu, and if you haven't, you know, please go look up the videos. A lot of hype videos on him, and just like you mentioned, the story we did about that some inside he's afraid he's going to outsign Solo, and reading some of the comments on Reddit about him and stuff like that, and not surprised that he's going to do that he's just that talented. He's, as you told me off the air, maybe the best of the bunch, and maybe the best of these new Bloodline cats. Also making the point that maybe he ends up with Roman's side. Maybe he'd be better off as a good guy, because he's just so talented. Maybe he's kind of limited by being a part of bad guy. I've seen a lot of people mention, I forget his name. What's the guy who is also Samoan, and he's one of the OG members of the Bloodline? Bad News.
Bad Luck Fale.
Yeah, I've heard people throwing his name out. Maybe they sign him. That would be interesting if he became like another guy, instead of swerving us all, and it won't be Jacob Fatu. It's him. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to how they bring Fatu in, where this Gorillas of Destiny is to go. Because they even mention it. They said, you know, it was guerrilla tactics, and they mentioned Destiny. Like, you know, if they use that name, that'd be great. You put me on to their theme song, which is Hi-Fi. You know,
bring that theme song in there.
Yeah, they have all those elements, and they stick to that. They don't shy away from this history they made. They embrace the history into WWE and then immerse it with the stuff they got. Very exciting times. The Bloodline is going to be really interesting heading into the summer and the fall, and it's great stuff. Moving on from there. Something else we covered on Ringside Intel was recent reports. Now, there's been a lot of reports about The Rock recently, and it's about his movie career and some of the stuff that he's maybe not the best person to work with, that he's very tardy when it comes to filming movies and costing movies a lot of money. But There was a separate story that came out recently about very much the WrestleMania stuff in that. Reportedly, there was a little bit of a resentment inside WWE about his coming back, throwing his weight around, some manipulations, and all kinds of stuff, and these weird plans of. There was one report about he wanted to come back, beat Roman, and then relinquish the title, go back to Hollywood, become the People's Champion forever. Just absolutely ridiculous. And now a lot of people thought he's just coming here because he's trying to kind of revitalize his career a little bit, because things have not been as great in Hollywood. You know, Black Adam was not a hit, and he's had some other movies that didn't turn out well, and he's had the TV show got canceled, so the resentment of coming back, just trying to catch WWE in their hot, saying wrestling is cool again, and taking credit when it was cool for like the last year before he even got there. You know, even some people happy that Night 2 did better than Night 1. What's your take on this? Like, how do you think this plays out? Like, does this end up going to a bad place, or just because of the insane success that WWE has had under the guidance of Triple H and the people that are in charge? Like, TKO is not stupid enough to screw around with the apple cart just because The Rock is around.
Finally, The Rock has shown up to set. Question mark, you know, like that's interesting stuff to hear. But like, like you said, TKO's not, you know, dumb enough to mess up a good thing here. And The Rock can say whatever he wants. He wasn't solely responsible for the success of WWE lately. The Cody storyline, the talent stepping up, the creative change, all of that stuff has contributed greatly to it, and they're seeing dividends on that. That being said, you know, a lot of negative stuff about The Rock. That's to be expected, if we're being honest. The man, you know, not necessarily negatively egotistical, but the man is about himself and about his brand. And he's going to put it out there. And, you know, credit to him at least for knowing that it could have been disastrous if he really pushed for the main event as it was originally intended. But he was able to pivot and came out looking fantastic for it. In terms of him throwing his weight around and things like that, yes, you know, he's powerful enough to do so. He's not going to give a damn. He's going to start cussing. He's going to start going overtime. He's going to start doing whatever he wants to do, and just, you know, the crowd is going to love him for it. As long as that success is there, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I really think it's a point of, you know, he's adding more than he's subtracting, and people just got to get on board for that. You know, say what you want about it. He did bring a lot of eyes to WrestleMania. This ended up being one of the biggest WrestleManias of all time. Mm-hmm. And now the talent themselves are riding that momentum while he's off back doing his Hollywood thing. So, you know, there's a lot more good to be had than bad in this situation. As long as it stays that way, I think it's totally fine. As long as he doesn't overstep his bounds, as long as he doesn't make it all about himself. Like, if he's, you know, going to bogart the title and things like that, that's a big no, and that's going to end up hurting him, and he should be smart enough to know that, and so should the creative team. But as long as it's used the way it was, you know what I mean, the tag match, the involvement, the tease of him coming back and having a feud with Cody, I think those things will be, you know, well received and in his wheelhouse of where he should be in terms of presentation. So I don't really have a problem with it. I think it'll be okay.